Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us again for another episode of Monday Afternoon Roundtable. Today's episode is going to be a really enjoyable one, especially for me, because I've got my old friend, David Childers, who I worked with at Statesville Police Department here. And David has a great story to tell. And he's brought his service dog, or his best pal, I would say. That's what I always call my dogs, my best pal. Now, what's her name again?
Her name is Dita.
Dita, okay. And Dita has been with you for several years, hasn't it?
10 years now.
Okay.
Yep, we've been out and about and around.
All right. Well, we'll get back to Dita, but let's talk a little bit about you, of how all this led up to her and your book, which we'll talk about once we get to it. Where your service career, you've served our country and locally in law enforcement and in the military. Talk about that.
Okay, right out of high school, my brother and I joined the Marine Corps.
And y'all are twins, right?
We are twins, yeah. Yeah, and that was something with them drill instructors.
I bet so.
They enjoy that.
Yeah.
We were a bit hesitant, but the recruiter came over in his dress blues, and it took us like 5 seconds to sign after we seen that dress blues. It was anyway. We ended up at Paris Island, January 1977. Stayed there 4 months. It's very detailed in the book. We had a time there, and then he went full-time Marines, and I went reserves. And I went back home to Pittsburgh. We were from Pittsburgh and grew up there. And after my time in the Marine Corps, I went to work in the coal mines, of all things, and did that for a while. Probably the best job I ever had.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. After that, joined the Army Reserves. Spent some time in an MP unit up in Pennsylvania. After that, personal issues in my life were happening that weren't so good, so it was time to move on. My brother was living in North Carolina at the time, so I brought myself down to Statesville, North Carolina. And, I don't know. After a couple of months, I was getting pretty hungry. Didn't have a job, couldn't find a job. And somebody said, one of my brother's friends told me, look, they're hiring for the jail. And I said, well, what does that mean? They want, you can be a jailer. Well, what is that? Well, you take care of the inmates. Well, I guess I could do that. I can give it a go. Well, then it turned into 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that just a little bit. A detention officer, jailer, is probably one of the hardest jobs in law enforcement, and probably the least appreciated job in law enforcement. And I never was a detention officer or jailer, but my brothers Tim and David were in the beginning, and I kind of missed out, because when you're a jailer, it teaches you how to work by yourself sometimes, and you get to learn all the people's names, who they are, how they react, all that stuff. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that was quite the experience for me. I had never no desire in my youth to be in law enforcement. None. Zero. And this kind of came because I needed a job, and I thought, well, I'll do this for a while. Well, once I got to work and seen what was going on, and you're absolutely right. When you're a jailer by yourself, you learn diplomatic procedure.
Yeah.
Because you learn how to talk to folks.
Yeah.
And they will treat you the way you treat them.
That's right.
And that's a critical component that I think is missing in law enforcement today.
You're right.
You have to know how to talk to folks. They're sitting in a jail. They ain't at home on the couch. There's a lot of stress involved with that.
Yeah.
And it's a tough road with little respect, as you say.
Yeah, and people don't realize you might have people working with you on the shift in the jail, but when you're doing the cell block, it's you. And it takes about probably 2 to 3 minutes before somebody to get there to help you if something goes down.
That's exactly right, and that's a long
time in a confined area with a bunch of people that might be out to hurt you.
That's exactly right, and I've had that happen.
Yeah.
I've been in that situation, and there's nothing pleasant about that. I will say this, though, that because of my demeanor, because of my willingness to talk to folks in what we would call proper manner, the way we want to be talked to, simply, I didn't have as many issues as some of the jailers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And and you've always had that good level demeanor and you respected people. You didn't take shit off nobody, but you were always respectful.
Yes, exactly. Correct on both counts.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do sometimes. Some people have it naturally, and some people have to learn it, and some people never learn it.
Exactly. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. So you worked in the jail. You worked there 9 years. What happened next?
Well, I worked in the jail for 2 years. Then they pulled me out and said, "You're not from Iredell County. We're sticking you in drug work."
Yeah, which is very smart because I did drug work for 10 years probably, and we did the same thing with some officers before that come in.
Yeah.
And it works out well.
It did. I was, thank the gods above, I was very successful for 4 months. They wanted just 4 months, and then we're going to put you on patrol.
Did straight undercover work, right?
Right. Yep. That's which is where I wanted to be, was patrol. Sure, I'll do that. I can do that. So I did a little bit of good work. Had 2 or 3 great informants. Because you're not doing anything without them.
Yeah, informants is if you don't have good informants, you don't have anything.
You don't have anything.
Yeah,
that's right. So so I was a bit successful there, and then I went on to road patrol for a while, and as we talked about earlier, publicity is crucial to sheriff's departments.
Yeah.
And especially drug publicity is critical.
Yeah.
So they brought me out and stuck me in as a full-time undercover narcotics investigator, and I did that on and off for the rest of my time at Iredell County, which equaled 9 years.
Yeah.
And it was a good time. It was tough times. I met a lot of great people, met a lot of not-so-great people. But it was interesting, and I learned a lot. And I found out when I wrote my book that everything I did in life kind of led to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right?
It was like a prearranged plan by God.
Yes, exactly what it was. And halfway through my book, I realized that, and I went, "Oh my God, this led to that. Oh, this is the worst day of my life. No, it wasn't. It's coming.
Yeah.
Bam. Oh, this is the worst day of my life. No, it wasn't." Yeah. And each thing led to the next, and each thing prepared me for the next. So, and that's how that worked. So I did that for 9 years, Iredell County. Ran afoul of the sheriff. Was dismissed.
Which happens sometimes.
Which happens. Yep. And that was okay because that was God's plan. And I ended up going to work for Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. Did that about 9 months, I think. And an old friend of ours, Mike Flory, who worked at Statesville Police, called me and said, "We got 3 openings. Get up here."
Yeah. Now, had you worked with Mike, like in drug work, like a task force somewhat?
Yeah, we did. Actually, it was a task force. It was a Catawba Valley Task Force, and we worked with Hickory and Catawba County.
And a story, if I maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but did Mike, right when the crack cocaine epidemic come out, was he not one that kind of knew a lot about that, right? He was the first. You're right. That
really
got into the background of all that, learning, because that was the mid '80s. It come quick.
It did,
and it hit small town USA, and you were part of that, probably, I guess, too.
I was, yeah. I remember Mike Flory bringing crack cocaine to the jailer and showing all the jailers.
That's when I was there. He showed the officers what it looked like.
He showed everybody. This is what it looks like. Don't let them get away with this.
Yeah.
Right? Make sure you seize this and call somebody, a detective, And, yeah, Mike was, I don't know, I guess you call him the founder of that type of investigation, crack cocaine investigation.
I think he even, if I remember right, he learned how to cook crack cocaine, like how they did it, so you would know what to look for in a search warrant for paraphernalia or stuff that would show that they were manufacturing it.
He did. He was ahead of his time then. He took all that knowledge. He wanted every bit of knowledge he could get, and he was good to share it with everybody.
Yeah. Is he still around?
No, Mike passed away several years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was a great guy, and
he was.
Yeah. All right, getting back to it, you went back. You met Mike, and he said, "Hey, come up to Statesville."
Yeah. So it was a pleasure leaving Charlotte-Mecklenburg. I just didn't jive with that office or police department. So got up to Statesville. Was there? I think I stayed 2 years there, and they put me in narcotics. and I spent their entire drug budget in 2 weeks. They went ballistic.
Yeah, but
And the evidence technician, she said, I've never seen so many drugs come in this police station.
Yeah.
I said, you just hang on.
Yeah.
You see nothing yet. So they dragged me in and they crawled me about spending the money. It was a lousy $20,000. It wasn't even enough to be considered a drug budget.
Yeah. For that size department, that's a low budget.
Yeah, that's low. And I said, look, I don't need money to make drug cases. I'm going to show you how it's done. And I did. And boy, I tell you what, I went to town, and that's what happened. Was at the end of 2 years, I had some conflict with the chief there. Didn't think much of him. The sheriff's office, the sheriff that unhired me earlier in a roundabout way, had me come back to the sheriff's office, and I was, of course, glad to do that.
Yeah.
That was my home. And I stayed there 2 more years, and then got out of that, and enough was enough.
Yeah.
Like we talked about, you got to know when to move on.
And a year working full-time dope is equivalent of working 3 years or 4 years any other law enforcement assignment.
I'd say that's right.
The 3 a.m. calls by informants, the working 24, the 30 hours straight, surveillance, the whole deal.
Yeah, and it was tasking because we didn't have the manpower, right? There was not enough manpower on the road. There was not enough manpower in the jail. There was not enough manpower anywhere. So drug enforcement was like down on the totem pole, until asset forfeitures started showing up.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Everything changed then.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they were finding nice cars for us to drive, reliable radios, Saul Mineroff recording equipment, right? And that kind of changed things.
Yeah.
But enough was enough, right? And it was time to move on. And by now it's 2000. I'm working for myself as a consultant for lawyers, conducting interviews, and I was having a pretty good time with that. And something happened to America that we'll never forget. 9/11 hit. And I was like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? So I called the Army. I said, what's the rules? Well, how old are you? I was 42 at the time. And I think their cutoff was like 38 or 36. So the bottom line was I was too old, and they said, no thanks. We don't need you. And I didn't know what to do. And a friend of mine, her husband had been to Kosovo as a State Department rep training Kosovo police. So I went to his coming home party, and I asked him, I said, how did you do this? How did this come about? And he told me, and I said, well, tell me about Kosovo. And this is what got me. He said, I can't. He said, you have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
I said, well, tell me how to see it. And I went to the State Department webpage, filled out proper paperwork. They had pretty tough standards back then. And next thing I knew, I was in Fredericksburg, Virginia, getting ready to ship out after about 8 days of pretty intense training. It was good training. It was top-notch training, actually. And got to Vienna, Austria, and flew into Pristina, the pearl of the Balkans. It's Kosovo.
Yeah.
And it's the capital of Kosovo. And Kosovo was a breakaway republic of Serbia, the former Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Right. And the president of Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic, went on an ethnic cleansing campaign against the Kosovo Albanian people.
Yeah.
Jason, my friend, was right. You had to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
You had to see it to believe it. It was a war zone. As a matter of fact, America and Great Britain still have it as a classified war zone. When we send people to Camp Bonsteel over there, they get wartime pay. Yeah. So I was there 20 months, and I had the privilege of working with the British Army. I worked with the Queen's Royal Lancers. They were a tank group.
I bet they were a wild group of people, weren't they?
Let me tell you, Davy Boy wasn't ready for that. Woo! And they shipped out because March 2003 was coming, which we know was the second invasion of Iraq.
Right, yeah.
Well, they started shipping out in October, early November 2002. My heart was broke, man. Those guys were They were great. Those British were great. And before they left, they did something I'll never forget. We did so much work together, and we worked so well, and we did so much damage to the bad guys. They swore me in as a British soldier.
Really?
They did. They before they left, they swore me in. And I said, do I get any rank with this? And they went, no, you don't get nothing.
Yeah.
See ya. And they left. And they were great young men,
Yeah.
just wonderful. But they were replaced by the 1st Staffordshire Regiment,
Okay.
which were infantry. Boy, those guys were something.
Compared to infantry or soldiers of equal type in America, was the training different, or were they same, equal? I mean,
My experience talking with the British soldiers is America's training has always been better than anybody else's in the world.
okay.
Training, equipment, food, logistics, didn't matter. The Brits, to a man, told me that whenever they had an opportunity to train with any American unit, they took it.
Good. Yeah.
They took it. Everything was exceptional
Yeah.
on our side, and they appreciated that. And I can tell you this too: the Queen's Lancers, Royal Lancers, and the Staffordshire Regiment, they were appreciative of America's efforts to eradicate Saddam Hussein.
Yeah.
They wanted to be there.
Yeah.
They wanted to be there. And
Yeah.
it was awesome working with those guys. And they stuck around till January of '03, and then they started. They needed those guys to hit the desert, and they started bringing in some Army of the Czech Republic. Holy cow! Again, Davy Boy wasn't ready for that.
Really.
These guys were, man, they were full speed ahead all the time. They were wonderful. They were wonderful. And if you have an opportunity to read the book, I go in great detail about my time in Kosovo because it was a critical time in history as well as for me. And I came out of Kosovo with a wife and a son and war bride. Kind of like
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's one of God's, the way, you think of A to B, but it goes, that's part of it.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
And, and I like to tell people it's like this. Kosovo's a Muslim country, right? And I got my wife and a son out of this crazy situation, and I look at it like this. It's Jesus 2, Satan 0,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's all good.
Yeah.
But the Czech army, they swore me in too. Jason, listen to this. They gave me a full uniform, a beret, and rank. They made me a captain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got the uniform at home. I tucked it away. It's safely put away. And because I asked him, I said, the British swore me in too, but they didn't give me a uniform. Oh, no, we got you. They gave me everything but the boots.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. It
That's
was
neat.
really cool.
Yeah.
And I left Kosovo under some tough circumstances. And before Rahima and I could get married, basically I had to be I was a guest of the Czech army for a long time because of threats to me, my life personally, and they got me out of there before we could get married. So I got back to the States, and I told Rahima, my wife's name's Rahima, and I told her, I said, before we get married, you need to understand, if I'm going to continue to do this, I want to serve America as long as I can. If they get me to Iraq, I'm going. If they can get me to Afghanistan, I'm going there too. And she looked at me and she said, at least you got a country to serve. Go. So that was big. That was huge for me.
We take we take that for granted.
We do.
I mean, we really do, and that's all over the world. There's countries changing, with civil wars or all kinds of things.
Yeah. And this isn't that long ago. This is 2000.
Yeah.
We're talking 2002. And I got out of there in May of 2004. Well, anyway, it was a long procedure, well documented in the book, about how I was able to get my family out of there. It took me writing letters to the White House. I wrote emails to George W. Bush and his wife, her personal email account. I sent them every week. I'd send them the same email on Monday, and I'd send it again on Wednesday. Finally, I got a letter from the office of the vice president, Dick Cheney,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of his aides. And it was a personal letter. It wasn't a formatted letter. It was a personal letter. And she was appalled at the situation. And so finally, we worked through that. We got our paperwork ready, my son's paper. It took 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to the Macedonian embassy to get her visa to come to him so I can go get them. And they gave her a hard time.
Yeah.
Macedonians, Albanians, cats and dogs, right? They don't get along.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she went back a second time and a third time, and I'm on the phone calling the Macedonian embassy, and I'm screaming on the phone, let me talk to an American. No, ha, click. They're hanging up on me. So I wrote a letter to my congressman. You may have heard of him, Rick Santorum.
Mm-hmm.
He was a candidate for president one time.
Yeah.
Called his office, sent them an email. Well, I sent him an email. Within 5 minutes, I got a phone call, and it was one of his assistants. And she said,
That's pretty quick.
yeah, she said, I'm mad, and I want to know how we need to handle this.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, ma'am, I don't know how you need to handle it, but I sure wish the senator or congressman, he was a congressman then, no, he might have been senator, I'm not sure. Anyway, I said, wish he would do something. And she said, I got a meeting with him tomorrow. We'll take care of it. Well, she called me the next day and said, he's on it, he's mad, he's upset, and he is right now personally writing a letter to the embassy in Macedonia. I said, really? Yep. The next day, after 2 days, just in contact with his office, Rahima called me and said that the embassy in Macedonia called her, pardon my language, come and get your shit. They didn't, whatever letter he sent them, faxed to them, it really let somebody's butt up down there.
Yeah.
And they did her paperwork. They wouldn't even let her in the embassy. They just waited for her at the gate and handed it.
They wanted that took care of.
Then just go.
Yeah.
Just go. So I got them to America 5 weeks later. 5 weeks later in October of 2005, I was in training for Iraq. So she couldn't speak English. My son was just 3 years old. He couldn't speak English, but he had to belong to a wonderful church. And the folks at the church said, go do what you got to do. We got it from here, which was really cool. And there was a lady that was a school teacher or something. She took Rahima and Leon, and she would teach them English through the Bible.
Now, where was this at?
This was in Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yep. She would take a kid's Bible book and start teaching them both English and how to count money. Rahima was in America 5 weeks when I left.
Wow.
And I get to my training, which is considerably longer now. It's 14 days now instead of Kosovo was 8. I get there and I meet some really great guys, and I team up with a guy named Roland Barvels. He was from Minnesota, police officer, former National Guard, Minnesota National Guard. He and I became best friends in a matter of just like one day. It was like we were meant to be. And, of course, they had a battle buddy program, and we were battle buddies. So for the whole 14 days, which included a trip to San Antonio down there, Fort Bliss, for more training. We got our more training down there. And Roland and I became quite formidable. We were a pretty good team, you know, and we helped weed out some of the undesirables. As you know, in police work, there's always a few undesirables.
Yeah.
We helped weed those guys out. Anyway, got to Baghdad. I'm like, come on. With Davy Boy's in Baghdad, you got to be kidding me, right? Come on. And I'm scared to death. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell you, I'm scared. There's IEDs going off. There's car bombs going off. They're shooting RPGs at our hotel, right? And this is the State Department. I got to tell you, DynCorp and the State Department did a great job preparing us, but nothing can prepare you for that.
Yeah.
There's nothing can prepare you for that. And so I made it through that, and Roland and I and 2 other guys kind of teamed up so we could have our backs covered the whole time. And we all decided that we wanted to go to Basra because the British Army was in Basra. We wanted to be around those guys. Well, Jason, this happened, that happened. You know, when you're dealing with 100 cops in the same building,
Could get rowdy.
it can get rowdy and unpredictable. And next thing I knew, I was getting shipped to Fallujah, Iraq. And I went, oh, my God, because I had heard of that one.
Mm-hmm.
And Roland, he got sent to Basra. And I was like, oh, this is not fair, right? This is not fair. But we're grown men. Well, when I said I wasn't ready for Baghdad, I wasn't. But what I seen in Fallujah wasn't even imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't imaginable. The rubble, destruction was incredible. Incredible. And even more incredible was our Marines. Whew. Man, those Marines, those young Marines were something else. And I'll try to keep this short. While in Fallujah, my first day out, I got hit by 2 IEDs on my truck. Got hit in the front, got hit in the back. We were part of a 4-vehicle convoy. And we were a quarter mile from the Fallujah Police Headquarters. We were almost at our destination, and they hit us. And what happened is the lead vehicle seen a box in the road, and I was the A driver, so I had the communications, and he started hollering, veer left, and I told the driver, slow down, veer left. Well, as soon as he slowed down, that first one went off. Boom. I mean, if he'd have continued at the same pace and straight, it would have come through my door.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the rule is you press on. You push through the fire, because what happens next is they follow up with small arms fire, RPGs, and things like that. That didn't even happen. The first one went off. It was like, veer left, now punch it, go. The second one went off and clipped our back end of our vehicle. It's a miracle none of us were killed. Absolute God's miracle. And we get to the police headquarters, and everybody's a little bit shook up, but when a traumatic event like that happens, you got to kind of laugh it off.
Yeah.
Right.
Defense mechanism.
Exactly. And again, I keep saying it because it's true. The State Department prepared us real well, but real life scenarios. I heard Mike and Brianna talking on your podcast about real life scenarios as opposed to training, and it's so true. And that's what I was thinking about when they were talking about it. And that wasn't even the worst part of the day. The worst part of the day was riding back to Camp Fallujah in a bucket truck and praying that there wasn't some sniper on a roof somewhere going to blow your brains out.
Yeah.
So I made it through that, and then that was December 5th, 2005, and then December 26th, 2005, the day after Christmas, a suicide bomber walked in on our recruiting drive that we were having. I tell you, those Iraqis, people can say what they want to. Unless you were there, I don't want to hear you. They were showing up to be police.
Mm-hmm. Even with that big a threat.
Even with the threat that they had. And they were showing up, big numbers. Well, we had a suicide bomber come in. And at that particular time, I had enough clearance where I could sit in on certain level meetings. Right? I didn't have super secret clearance, none of that. But I had enough clearance where I could sit in on secret meetings and things. Secret meetings. But one of the issues that was brought up was that the insurgency had shifted. They knew killing Americans wasn't going to get them nowhere. So what they did was they started on killing interpreters. Kill the interpreters. They can't communicate. They got to go.
Yeah.
Right? Logical. Jason, they told me, said, go get Fat Sam. He was one of the interpreters. Go get Fat Sam and Elvis and a couple more and bring them over to the recruiting area. I said, yep, got it. So I walk out into this big open field we had where the detainees, we had detained the civilians that wanted to be policemen. And I seen this police officer walking towards this group of interpreters where Fat Sam was. And as I'm walking towards him, I see him, and he catches my attention because his coat is too big. And you know how when you're kids and you walk in with a coat that's too big, you cup your hands under the sleeve, right? Yeah. Because you don't have gloves.
Yeah. And
it was kind of a cool day. And Jason, that guy just didn't look right to me for some reason. And sure enough, he threw a hand grenade at Fat Sam and them. He had it cuffed under his sleeve. Well, I'm sorry. Edit that. That's not what happened. What happened was, as he approached those guys, the hand grenade went off and blew off his hand and blew him to the ground. He had the presence of mind to take the other hand grenade and throw it at a crowd of people that was running for a duck and cover bunker. Then, with his hand blown off, laying on the ground, he went into his pocket and came out with the clicker to set off the suicide vest. You talk about a fanatic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we were dealing with.
Super motivated
for the cause.
Yeah.
Yep. And one of the Marine security guys came over and blew the back of his head off. Thank God, and that was the end of him. And then EOD showed up and took the vest. And we learned later that when the hand grenade went off in his hand, shrapnel hit the vest, which sliced the wires, which couldn't make a circuit, so the bomb couldn't go off. That's how the good Lord saves lives.
Yeah.
And my time in Iraq kind of went like that for 18 months. It was always something.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go on about
No,
that.
you
But
take your time, do what.
well, there is few other critical things. In December of 06, I'm there barely 90 days, and I'm walking around in circles, basically wondering what in the world is going on, right? Because Jason, they killed a young Marine there that was just horrific. He was a good friend of mine. He's a young kid. He was wonderful. Sniper got him. And, I was sick for days over that. And then on January 18th, 2006, I got a call from Roland. And I looked at the phone and I said, that's not Roland. And I answered the phone. It was another fellow by the name of Mike Cox. And all he said was Dave. As soon as I heard it was Mike, I said, what happened to Roland? He said they got him. They killed him with an IED. I was sick for weeks. But as my British friends taught me, my British Army friends taught me, you have to crack on. You crack on. You pull yourself together and you keep moving forward, right? So that's what I did. I made it through that, and eventually my commander, Ed, he called me in his office. He said, that's enough. He said, you're going to get killed, and enough's enough. There were other incidents as well. And he said, I'm bringing you in. You're going to be my administrative chief. I'm going to make you in charge of the paperwork for the whole Al Anbar division. I said, you're the boss, Ed. Whatever you say. And because I didn't care. Wherever they used me, that was fine. I'm not going to. I'm not one of those guys that would complain. Keep me in. A lot of guys did that. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And they knew it. And so Ed was good to his word. But before he could bring me in, at the Iraqi police headquarters in downtown Fallujah, there's the main building. Then there's another building that housed Marines. And then there was another building called the CMOC. That's where the civilians could come and file claims against the Marines. Well, I was housed at the CMOC, and I was at the headquarters building. One day we had to drive across this big open field in an up-armored vehicle because snipers. Snipers will shoot you walking across there. And we got over to the CMOC, and it was like, oh, thank God, right? No trouble. No more than to shut the door than a small arms fire started. Ambush. Pow, 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 right? So I'm not in a position to return fire because I can't pinpoint where it's coming from. Plus, I want to get under cover somewhere. So I started running for the back door of the CMOC.
Yeah.
Jason, I'm running full speed ahead.
You didn't know you could move that fast.
I did not. At this time, I'm 46 years old, 47 years old. And I got all this body armor and all this stuff on. Well, I got this good forward body lean, right? I'm running like a sprinter. I'm like, oh, man. I never ran this fast in my life. Then there was a HESCO barrier. HESCO barrier, this particular one, was about 8 feet tall, and it's full of dirt. And its purpose in life is to stop car bombs. It don't move.
Yeah.
Jeez. I couldn't get stopped, and I hit that joker head on, cracked my Kevlar, knocked myself out. Some young Marine was up there, seen it happen. He run down. We had him straps on the back of our body armor.
Yeah.
He grabbed me by that body armor and dragged me up them steps face first. Which I didn't know. I was unconscious anyway.
Yeah.
And he dragged me in there, and he got the doc to look after me, those Navy corpsmen.
Yeah.
I can never say enough about them.
Yeah.
And anyway, I survived that, but I came out of that with TBI.
Yeah.
I came out of that with a brain injury. And but I stayed. I begged them to keep me, and they did. So the time passed, and after 18 months, it was time. Right, I couldn't do no more.
Mm-hmm.
So I get back to the States, and Raheem was like, "Oh, you okay? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine." Well, I wasn't.
Yeah.
And we wasn't long. I got a phone call from my recruiter, DynCorp recruiter. He said, "You ready to go to Afghanistan, Davy boy?" Davy boy's ready to go. And I filled out the paperwork, and I went to training for that. And it was not quite as eventful as Kosovo or Iraq. But I started in Kabul, training police, had a great time. I love those Afghans, love those people. And then I ended up in Kandahar down there. And the State Department had their own base down there, so I wasn't really embedded with anybody but our own guys.
Yeah.
And I worked with the border police at the Kandahar airfield, which was really cool. And we had a good group of men down there, and it was a great learning experience. And I'm so happy I got to spend time with the Afghan police. You can put this in or not when you edit, but personally, I didn't think much of the Iraqis. They were okay.
Yeah.
Right? They were like the neighbor next door that you just say hi to and keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
But the Afghans were like the neighbors on the other side that you had dinner with and went to movies and things. And I just love those Afghans.
Yeah.
Their heart was in it to save their country. My opinion, more so than the Iraqis.
And they had been doing that since the Soviets. I mean, it's been 40 years they were fighting.
Yeah, and they really put it on those Soviets. I had a logistics commander, Colonel Maksudi, in Kabul, and he fought the Russians, and he would tell me about it. He told me one day, he said, "David," he said, "I can't begin to tell you what they did to my people."
Yeah.
He said, "I just can't." He said, "You would just curl up if I told you what they did, and why we had to do what we had to do."
Yeah.
And I said, "No, I get it, because Americans ain't crazy about them Russians either."
Yeah.
Just so you know, he
Yeah.
was happy to hear that.
Yeah.
But I met so many good Afghans, so many good Afghan police officers and people. It was wonderful. And then by that time, my mental health was completely shattered.
Mm-hmm.
My wife will tell you.
Was it something that progressively where you realized it, or did it just one day you were just like, man, it's too much?
What happened is everybody was telling me I was having problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them, "You're the problem."
Yeah.
It's in us to not admit weakness.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do that. And I went for years homeless, sleeping in my car. Wife and son were with friends. I refused to I couldn't even say the letters PTSD. I refused.
Mm-hmm.
And my doctor diagnosed me with PTSD. He said, "You better say it.
Mm-hmm.
You better say those words, because you got it. And your brain injury ain't never going away. TBI,
Yeah.
It doesn't go away. PTSD, maybe we can work on, but that brain injury is not going anywhere." And I still refused, right? It wasn't until I took a course. It's a real class. It's a real course, and it's called Reboot Combat Recovery. And it was designed by some folks in Kentucky for combat veterans to heal spiritual wounds,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not all wounds are visible. And, oh boy, my wife, my brother, and this guy, Brad Borders, up in Statesville, he's an Army chaplain. Boy, they were on me.
Mm-hmm.
"You're coming to this class. You're coming to this class." I go, "No, ain't nothing wrong with me. You're the problem. There's nothing wrong with me."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, they get me to this class, this reboot class. And the first night was brutal, because all these memories come rushing back. They come rushing into my brain, everything. And by this time in my life, people asked me to explain it. My brain was like a riot going on in there all the time. Just a riot. Nothing made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to this reboot course, and I got home the first night, and I told Rahima, I said, "There's no way I can go back there. I'm shaking, sweating, swearing,
Mm-hmm.
Next day I get up and she says, "You okay, husband?" I said, "Well, I feel this much better. And if I feel this much better, if I complete the course, maybe I'll feel better more."
Yeah.
Right? So I go. It's a 12-week course. In the week 11, they have you write your story, my life before combat, my life during combat, my life after combat. So I started writing my story. And we had our graduation. It was great. It's a great course. I can't go another step without telling you how wonderful this course is. It's faith-based, and it's real. It brings out real truths. And I come to find out in that course that everybody in there was the same as me.
Yeah.
Everybody else is messed up. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right? But we weren't. And that course brought us to that realization. Right? And mental health is a critical issue that nobody. This was 6 years ago that nobody really wanted to talk about. They barely talk about it now.
Yeah.
But back then, and well, I started writing my story, and I presented my story at graduation, and folks seemed to like it, and I just kept writing. And by this time, I've had Dita about 6 years.
Okay.
I've had her about 6 years, and I start writing this book. Well, it didn't start out as a book. It just started out as write for therapy, my own sanity. And I'm writing this thing, and I'd only read 2 books in my life, the Bible, all the way through, and Lone Survivor.
Yeah.
So I read Lone Survivor and said, Marcus Luttrell
It's a good book.
is a good book. He starts at the beginning because he wants you to know where he came from.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of took that idea as my own, and that's why I came up with my book. Well, the original manuscript was almost 1,400 pages.
Yeah.
It's now 720. I cut out the cuss words.
That's a lot.
Once I cut out the cuss words, it was manageable.
Yeah.
And it took me 4.5 years to write this book. And it was kind of crazy. And then when I got done with it, I thought, well, who in the heck would read this? Who the heck's going to read this? And so I thought about it, prayed about it, prayed about it, talked to my wife, talked to my brother, talked to Brad Borders, talked to a few other people. And they said, maybe you can help one person.
That's right.
Maybe that book will help one person.
It'd be worth it. It's just one person.
Exactly right. Exactly what come to my mind. And I said, well, you know what? You're right. So Amazon, God bless them for whatever they're worth, they made it easy.
Yeah.
They're a blessing and a curse, Amazon. But they made it easy to produce this book. Now, if you notice the cover.
Let's go ahead and get, since we're. Yep.
The cover is the earth is black. The sky is clear. That's God. That's an actual picture of me and an actual picture of Dita taken from pictures that the guy was superimposed in that book.
Wow.
And so what we got here is heaven and earth, man and his dog. And Raheem and I were sitting around one night, and we came up with God Sent the Dog. And that just seemed like the perfect title. Well, I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to tell you that we have sold around 750 copies.
Really?
Yeah, in about 1.5 years.
Great.
So we're really excited about that. And I hope to keep pushing forward and getting it out. And I've had some good feedback. Some people questioned the length of the book. And, a buddy of mine told me, he said, look, I'm a reader. It doesn't matter if I read 3 200-page books or 1 600-page book.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so it's available as an ebook. It's available in paperback. You guys have one of the last remaining hard copies.
Yeah.
It was my honor to present to you guys.
Yeah. And let me read this. Is what it says here. It says, to Jason, David, and Tim, thank you for your many years of service to America. I wish nothing but the best for you all now and in the future. May God bless and keep you always. Dave and Dita, Statesville, North Carolina, February 9th, 2023. And it's got Dita's paw print.
Yeah, Dita signed it.
That's right. Well, I appreciate that, and we're definitely going to read it, and we're going to keep talking about it. And we've got some other things I want to talk about. Talk about the little four-legged angel that God sent you, Indita, what is she like?
Well, that's something. My wife, as I mentioned earlier, is Kosovo Albanian.
Mm-hmm.
Dogs are not something that they have there.
Okay.
They're not house pets. So when she came to America, I said, now listen, everybody's got dogs. Oh, no. Well, I knew I needed a dog, did some research, couldn't afford a dog. Hadi, come, Hadi, come on, Hadi, get up here. That wire's got her messed up.
Oh. Uh-oh. Here you may.
Go. Did some research, couldn't afford one. Well, I trained enough dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a
Canine,
drug dog with the
yeah,
sheriff's office, and worked with bomb dogs and patrol dogs, and
Mm-hmm.
just about every kind of dog you can work with, I've worked with or been around, training wise. And so I said, well, maybe I can train my own sometime. Well, January 10 years ago, I take her and my son to the Iredell County Animal Control Office to show them how we treat dogs in America,
Mm-hmm.
how we try to find them homes and how we care for them, and things like that. Well, we got over there, and with no intention of purchasing a dog whatsoever, and we go in the back. They take us in the back, and there's a full-blooded pug running around on the floor, a little puppy.
Mm-hmm.
And this one was sitting in the middle of the floor, just looking, big old brown eyes. Mm-hmm. And the lady whispers to Rahima, "Take the pug. They're expensive. You can get it for $80." And Rahima says, "Well, what about that brown one?" She said, "That brown one's not going to be here much longer. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants that dog. Nobody's ever touched that dog. And nobody's taking it to their home." And Rahima said, "Well, she's going today. We'll take her." Mm-hmm. Most unlikely source possible. Save this dog. Well, I got her home, and I started training her and working with her. And it's, God sent the dog. Mm-hmm. He sent this dog.
Yeah.
She took to her training. She's doing her job right now, which is comforting me while I'm at high anxiety going on.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going on in me right now that's not comfortable, but she makes it bearable.
Mm-hmm.
She's the reason I can get out of the house. And I'm going to tell you, it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience with her. And she just caught on. She knew everything to do almost without me showing her.
Mm-hmm.
It was an amazing thing, because I knew what I needed. I needed trauma. I have trauma at night.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I needed her to do at bedtime, right? And I know what I needed her to do in the daytime when I'm out. And she just picked it up just like this. With her sitting on me, it's like having a weighted blanket.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will tell you this. We went to a hotel in Connecticut, and we got thrown out. I told the lady, I said, can you read this?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't care. Did not care. And I said, well, you're going to care. So I went home and I wrote a good police report,
Mm-hmm.
right, like we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent it through the Americans with Disability Act webpage,
Mm-hmm.
filed a complaint. 18 months later, I got a call from a prosecutor in Connecticut. And long story short is, he was assigned this case, but he was a drug prosecutor. He had no interest in a hotel and a dog until his wife showed up to bring him lunch one day. And she seen canine written on a file. And she said, "What is that?" And he told her. And she said, "Well, if you want supper, you'll start it today." She was a big dog lover.
Yeah.
And so he called me. And he said, "We'll take care of this."
Yeah.
Long story short, they did.
Good deal.
Yeah, they took care of that. That'll never happen again up there. But that was the only problem we ever had. It was
Mm-hmm.
one time. Now, when we first started 10 years ago, and I was taking her out as a youngster, a year-old puppy, people would look at us funny, like in Food Line or Walmart or something. Now people don't even look at us.
Mm-mm.
And people are used to the
Yeah.
idea.
More and more people are doing that now
Yeah.
too. It's getting.
Yeah. And people will talk about, is it really a service dog? Well, I imagine there's people out there abusing it, this
Mm-hmm.
this type of thing. It's not for me to say.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to worry about me and this one.
Mm-hmm.
And what other people do, they do. That's on them.
Let's talk a little bit about. I know we're going longer, but that's fine.
No
if you're
worries.
Good, I'm good.
Yep.
Let's talk about your more of your support staff and your wife and family. How do they help you out with? And your wife is a brave lady coming to a new country, not knowing the language, but then adapting, learning the language, learning the customs. leaving her home.
Yeah.
That's a story in itself.
It is. It most certainly is. She was a police officer.
Really?
She was a police officer.
Yeah.
And when I got to Podievo, or when I got to Pristina training, I met a guy from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And he said, whatever you do, don't go to this place called Podievo.
And that's the first place you went, right?
It wasn't 5 minutes. Some guy stuck his head in the door. Hey, is there a Children's here? Yeah, right here. Get on that truck. You're going to Podievo. Oh, man, are you kidding me? So I get up there, and I'm not the kind that's leaving. Mm-hmm. I'm not leaving. If that's where God sends me, that's where I'm going, right? I ain't leaving. Well, I was there about 3 or 4 days, and I seen her standing in the lobby in her police uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, keep in mind, I'm a bachelor, 20 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
20 years I'm a bachelor. I seen her, and I said, oh, boy, I'm going to marry that one. And then I was like, where'd that come from?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't said those words in 20 years. Right?
Yeah. Scared you, didn't it?
You did. And somehow or another, good Lord works things out. And I was able to get her and my son here, get married and get my son here. And but the key that I have learned through all of this is education. Like, she had to learn mental health is a real thing. These issues are real. My brother had to learn. They're still learning. We're all learning. And I learned that the key is the education of learning about mental health and then applying that education to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I know when I'm having a bad day now.
Yeah.
Right? I know when I'm having a bad day. I know stay home.
Yeah. Don't
go out the door. I know when I'm having a good day. Maybe I can go to Food Line this morning. Mm-hmm. Right? So that was the key. That the support from them, and then support from guys like Brad Borders and the guys at Purple Heart Homes up in Statesville. They're all good friends, and I've been attending reboot classes now for 6 years mm-hmm. as a mentor to the new guys coming in, and that's always a blessing because that continues to help me grow stronger. I don't know that I can only speak for me. I know the TBI is here to stay, and that's a problem. But I don't know that the PTSD will ever be cured, mm-hmm. right? I don't know, but I do know it can be eased up some.
Mm-hmm. You know how to monitor it.
Yeah,
and like you said, if you're having a bad day, you know steps that you can take to prevent it from getting worse.
Exactly. Instead of before reboot and learning, it was just like, get out of the way, leave me alone. Mm-hmm. Well, now I know, Rahima, today's not a good day. And she knows too. She could see. She sees. And she says, are you okay today? No, I'm not. And she knows what to do from there, which is go in the kitchen or something.
Yeah.
Know, right? It's I don't like that, but it's the best way to proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's peace. Keep peace. And that's all I'm searching for nowadays is peace. I just want peace.
Yeah. And we have several listeners that are either current law enforcement, former military, or even people that were civilian that have PTSD, you know, that could possibly be thinking, maybe I have this, maybe I don't.
Right.
You know, should I go see a person? Should I talk to somebody? You know, and just by you talking about it, just bringing it out in the open is an encouragement to other people.
Well, that's the good part of all of this. 6 years ago, I couldn't do this. Mm-hmm. Couldn't do it. And again, we go back to helping one person, right? Mm-hmm. If we can just help one. And with your permission, and if you don't mm-hmm. mind, someday I'd like to come back on your show and talk about reboot for first responders.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
There's a program out there for first responders specifically designed.
Yeah. Police, EMS, fire,
nurses.
Yep.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. And it's a great course. Mm-hmm. It's equally as good as the combat recovery course.
Yeah.
And that's probably a whole different podcast.
We can definitely do that.
But if you like, I'd like to come back and talk about that.
We'll schedule that.
And it's the communication that's critical.
Yeah.
I found out that, I was the one that stayed home, stayed away from people. Then I get in a room with other combat vets, and they were the same. And they were saying, hey, that's me. Mm-hmm. Hey, I was like that. And it usually takes about 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, and we start bringing the guys start coming
Yeah.
around and start talking about things, and it's been an amazing experience this last 6 years with this reboot. This Brad Borders is a military chaplain. He's in the U.S. Army. He's a reservist, and he runs these courses, and he's an exceptional instructor. He's an exceptional leader, and he's an exceptional person.
Yeah.
And he's able to pull these classes together and get these men and these women to step up and start living a life again.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give you a homework assignment for your next. You just think in your head the reboot for the first responders, and that's the key. You were talking about information. A lot of people don't know these resources are available.
Yep. Yep.
And that's the key, is getting that these resources are available.
Yep.
Look at mental health just as if you've got diabetes, heart disease,
Yes.
or whatever, asthma. It's something that happens that you may not control, but you can learn about it to control it if you have the proper resources available.
That's exactly right. And this reboot course, it's not a clinical thing. It's a class. It's an actual class.
It's more spiritual and probably.
Yeah, because you need. Let's face it, I don't mind telling your listeners. When I first got back, what's the first thing the doctor did? Slap me full of pills. Slap me full of pills. You're messed up. Here you go.
Yeah.
Those pills didn't work. Here you go. Those pills didn't work. More pills. I'd sit on the couch 18 hours a day staring at the TV. I wouldn't care if the house fell down or burned up, because my brain wasn't. The pills were just
Numbing
me. Exactly. It wasn't until my brother said, "Throw them pills in the garbage and get a dog. You know dogs, get a dog." I went, he's right. So I threw the pills in the garbage. And then I started researching, as I said earlier, they're extremely expensive. Oh, my God. And I lived in an apartment, and I'd signed a lease that said no pets. Ignorant to the ADA laws, Americans with Disability Act laws, I said, well, no way. My brother says, get a prescription from your doctor, give it to your landlord. Man, what are you talking about? He says, yeah, see if the doctor will give you a prescription. So I went to my doctor in Statesville, and he said, he thought about it for a minute, and he said, yeah. So he writes out this letter to the landlord without going into specifics because of HIPAA and all that.
I mean, we're laughing, but that's legit.
It's legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. And I handed that letter to my landlord, and he went, oh, okay. Do what you got to do. I said, okay. And it wasn't too much longer. We had little Dita.
Well, good deal.
And my life has got better ever since.
All right. We're going to wrap it up, but I want to get out. There's 3 things I want to cover.
Yep.
I want to cover this first. Just say again where people can get a hold of this book.
This book, God Sent the Dog, is available on Amazon.com. It's available as a paperback and an ebook. The ebook's really nice. The proceeds for the book, all proceeds from the book, support Purple Heart Homes, which is a veteran organization to support veterans improve their lives in their homes. They fix bathrooms, heating units, windows. They go into the home for the veteran, and they fix it, and they do great work. They're located in Statesville. They do a great job. Matter of fact, they're going to be at the Super Bowl this week.
Really?
Yeah, they've been invited to bring their program out there, and it's a wonderful organization.
All right, that's I have to remember that. The next thing I want to step up and get these gifts you brought us and some stuff to show us. Now, first, this is not a gift, but you brought it to show. Tell us about that.
This is my International Police Officer's Badge. This badge was the first one they gave me when I went to Kosovo, and I've hauled it all over the world ever since. And somebody told me, I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm sticking with it, that once you're an international police officer, you're one for life. So I don't know if that'll get me a cup of coffee anywhere, but I'll take it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll take it. It's a nice looking badge, and I've shown it all over the world, different places, and it's a wonderful thing. Yeah.
And next, here's you brought this for Tim.
I did.
What is it?
This is a patch from the fire brigade in Kabul, Afghanistan. Those of us in law enforcement and fire patches are critical
Oh,
to
yeah.
what we do. We
Yeah.
love patches. And I was trying to think what I could get for Tim, and I seen where he was a fireman, and I said, I'm going to give him this patch. It'll be something. I know it's in a good place.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story about Tim. Before he went into law enforcement, he was a firefighter. He was the youngest firefighter at Granite Falls. I think he was 18 when he got on.
Oh, gee.
I'll show you the clipping when we get done. There's an article when he was a firefighter. He went and got a dog out of a burning building and gave it CPR and saved its life.
Oh.
And he got an award for it. So,
Good deal.
So that goes with the dog and the thing. That's really good. Now you got this for David.
I did.
Explain what this is.
This is an Afghan traditional hat. It's called the Masood, Colonel Masood, who was the lion of the Panjshir fighting the Russians. The Russians actually got to the point where they went around him. He was part of the Northern Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want nothing to do with this guy because he was really putting it on them. And everybody in Kosovo, every male in Afghanistan pretty much wears this. And I'm going to tell you, you won't put a warmer thing on your head than
Really?
this right here.
Yeah.
And I printed out a few things about this cap for David to read later on, so he'll know exactly what it is. But I thought it might be something that would look good on his desk and maybe a conversation piece or something like that. And plus, all his years in law enforcement and everything he's done for our country, it's a little show of respect for me to him.
Well, that's good. And let me put that right here. And this is what you got me.
Oh, yeah.
Now, here's a little we're going to get into a little personal stuff here. The last time David saw me was probably 25 years ago, and I weighed about 165 pounds.
That's what I told Rahima coming in.
Now I weigh probably 225, so it's a good thing he prepared for that. He got me an extra large, which is just right. But tell them about. I'll show it here.
That is a Fallujah, Iraq police headquarters shirt that one of my coworkers designed over there, and he had them made and produced, and we gave them out to the Iraqi police.
Okay.
And then, of course, we took some for ourselves.
Yeah.
We by purchasing those shirts, we were able to give them to the Iraqis.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have anything.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty neat deal. But that's an original. You see them on eBay and all kind of crap now. But that's an original, straight from Fallujah T-shirt. And I wanted Jason to have that as part of my respect to him as well.
Well, I greatly appreciate it, and we appreciate the gifts. And it's like you read our minds, the anything like it. And I love law enforcement T-shirts. I got NYPD, Dallas Police Department, and this is perfect. This is perfect, isn't it? And this will be my favorite out of those. Now we're gonna wrap it up. I know we're going a little bit on time, but I want to tell a couple of stories about David. When I worked with him, I was a brand new rookie officer, and at Statesville we had probably 10 people on a shift if we were full.
Yeah.
And David worked South Statesville, and I worked West Statesville. And South Statesville was happening. It's still happening now, but it was hopping back then.
It sure was.
And that was when crack cocaine was still big. You had the open air drug market before cell phones. It was wide open then. And I learned a lot from you and some other officers on the shift. And I remember thinking you either once a week as an officer there, once a week, one of these four things happened. You either got in a car chase, which the car chases weren't long usually.
Yep.
Because South States, when everything south of 70 was gridded almost. It was basically, hey, I'm gonna get to home base and then jump and run.
Yep.
So you either had a car chase, a foot chase, which you had a ton of them.
A ton of those, yeah.
Or you either had to lay hands on somebody, like a physical, not necessarily a fight, but you had to ground somebody, put them on the ground or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you had to draw your gun.
Oh yeah.
One of those four things happened at least once a week.
Yep.
And it was amazing experience. But I remember working with you, and you would come in at shift meeting when we get done, especially on day shift. You'd come in and you'd have a towel with you, white towel. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I asked you one day, I said, why don't you take lunch? Because, we had to check out on meal break. And you said, man, I ain't got time to do that.
Too much going on down there.
And I started thinking, well, that's very, and you were busy from the time we clocked on to the time we clocked off. And our shift was known for that. And I remember, if you didn't have paperwork, our lieutenant would come by every 3 or 4 hours to meet you in the zone to get your paperwork so you didn't have to come to the office.
Right.
And if he come to your zone and you didn't have no paperwork, he said, well, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
That's
right.
You can be writing tickets, serving warrants, writing reports, working accidents, something.
Something better be going on. Yep.
Yeah. And so you were the most proactive officer on patrol that I seen. And as a newer officer, I didn't quite grasp it, but I remembered it. And the older I got, I became more proactive, and I learned how to get dope and learn how to do,
get them
guns, dope, wanted people,
and
that's through proactive policing. And,
yep.
and I learned a lot from you just watching and working car stop, backing you up on a traffic stop, or, we answering calls together, or anything. And I remember one night we were on night shift, you arrested somebody or took custody of somebody that had just left a drug house. You did a traffic stop on them, and you went and typed out a search warrant. We served a search warrant that night, as a patrol officer, and that's a rarity,
Yeah.
And
we had the right lieutenant for that.
Yeah, we did on that night. Yeah. And he was proactive and I learned a lot from him too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He kept the same demeanor. If he was patting you on the back or kicking you in the ass, he had the same demeanor.
That's true.
Yeah. And I remember, and he kicked me in the ass more than he gave me a pat on the back. But the good thing from that is I learned.
Yeah.
And I didn't take it personal. I was like,
No.
because what he said was true. I'd be like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you're right. What do you say?
Yeah.
And we had a good group.
We did.
And I remember we had a lot of stuff going on, and it was, in hindsight, being 2020, I would have stayed there. Or stayed in, because I learned a lot, but
yep.
there was a lot of stuff going on there too, but at all places.
Like all places, yep.
But I just remember how proactive you were, and at the same time, you were a professional. You weren't the dick-headed cop.
Oh no.
Even the bad guys respect. I mean, they weren't. You showed respect to them, and they showed respect back.
Yeah, I give them the opportunity to be respectful back, and we go from there. And most times they were appreciative of that.
Yeah.
And even though they knew they were getting cuffed,
yeah,
they would respond respectfully, peacefully, and we go get it taken care of.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember them two brothers down in Statesville, Charles Corey and Winky.
Mm-hmm.
Remember Big Winky?
Yeah.
I had papers on both of them.
Yeah, and
I went and got them both.
Yeah.
I put them two big jokers in the back of that cruiser, and it went like this down the road.
Yeah.
That's how big them boys was. But when I carried them into the magistrate's office, everybody was stunned.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to get one of them guys. How'd you get both? And I just said, you got to know how to approach things.
Yeah.
You got to know how to talk to people. And I had a rapport with Winky.
Yeah.
And he knew exactly where I was coming from at all times.
Yeah.
And he respected that and feared it a little bit.
Yeah, you were honest with them, and you were respectful, and that was a big thing I learned too. And working dope, just proactive, working dope. Like you said, you can get as much dope without money.
Yeah.
As you get, your informants call you up and say, this or that, and you kept informants while you were on patrol.
I did,
and they still.
Yeah. Yeah, and see what the thing I tried to teach guys, nobody would listen to me though. I tried to teach them, but at the sheriff's office and Statesville Police both, was go to the jail.
Yeah.
So see who's been sitting in there a long time.
So go talk to them.
And go talk to them.
Yeah.
Boy, they'll sing all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a cigarette and a can of Coke.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you who killed. Who's that gangster? The one they think's buried in New Jersey.
Oh, this Teamsters guy.
Yeah, the Teamsters guy.
Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa. They'll tell you who killed Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
But it was just a matter of, Jason, and you know this, and you still doing it today. It's just a matter of not being lazy, not waiting till later.
Yeah.
Not waiting for somebody else to do it.
And when you're like that on a 12-hour shift, that 12 hours goes by really quick.
It does. It really goes by quick. And that all those lessons learned from Statesville Police, Sheriff's Department, Charlotte Mecklenburg, all those lessons learned, every bit of it parlayed in Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan. In Kosovo, I had executive authority. I could go out and make arrests. And so I decided I was going to lead by example. I was going to lead from the front. And that's what I did over there, and that's why I got in a little bit of trouble with the local terrorist group over there.
Yeah,
and
made a name for yourself over there.
And of course, it's easy to do when you got the support of the British Army.
Yeah,
the Army of the Czech Republic. You can be a little more bold in those situations. And I just kind of went, got on the wrong side of things. But it's well documented in the book. But those experiences at Little Statesville Police Department paid out at the end.
Yeah, and it was a busy spot. It was then. I'm sure it still is today. I really enjoyed those times there. I mean, it was the perfect place for a new rookie officer.
It was,
because you learned so much. You got the big city and you got the town, kind of small town politics all rolled up in one. So you had to learn to deal with.
You had to learn. Yep. It was a great place to start.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, you're going to stick around for last call.
I am.
Like I said, I'm going to give you a homework assignment for the next time you come, and we'll talk about that for the first responders, the reboot.
Yes, we will.
And whatever you want. And you can come back, you and your wife and dog, come back, family can come back anytime. You're welcome here anytime.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
All right, guys, that's our episode. Be sure to look up David's book if you're interested in getting that on Amazon, and follow us Monday Afternoon Roundtable on Facebook and on Spotify. Like, share, and subscribe. All right, thanks, and we'll see you next episode.
Welcome, everyone, to Monday Afternoon Roundtable. Last call, our favorite part of the day.
That's right.
We've got a special drink today. I've never seen anything like this, Mark. Well, Mark brought it to us from the ABC store in Hickory, I'm assuming? Granite Falls, okay. It's called the Steelhouse America's Finest Limited Edition Black Bourbon, official bourbon of the Daytona 500. Mark's got some NASCAR background.
It might takes like race gas. I don't know.
It might, so we're going to check it out here.
Also joining us is David Childers' wife, Rahima, and she's going to take part in the last call as well.
And I hate I missed your podcast with David. I'm looking forward to it. David and I go way back as well.
Oh, yeah.
When I worked with the Highway Patrol. So, anyhow, I'm looking forward to that podcast, David. And a pleasure meeting you too, Rahima. All right, I'm going to break this thing open.
None of us ever drunk any liquor out of a paint thinner can. Definitely a different color.
That won't pour well.
Thank you.
Poured good right out onto the table.
Yeah, it does have a good color.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. David, what we do is just taste the bourbon or whiskey or whatever we're drinking for the day, and then we'll talk about it for just a minute, but it smells good. So I got most of it on the table here. So, yeah. And you have your canine with you. Tell me, what's the name again? I can't remember.
Her name's Dita.
Her name?
Yep.
Dita. We'd give you a drink, but you know how it is.
She's driving. So
Okay. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
All right, let's try this.
That ain't bad at all.
Okay. What's the alcohol content again? 80 proof. No, it's not. It's not
terrible.
It's not as bad as I thought.
Very smooth.
Yeah, the front end bite is not at all.
No, no.
Well, it's just the fact that it comes in a can. That's just different. So, and it's a little odd, but it's not bad. It's produced and bottled by Steelhouse Spirits Company of USA. I don't know where they're out of. Steelhouse was elevated to genuine American craft in making spirits using our Proprietary, all-natural recipes and distilling mastery. Our superior taste and remarkably smooth finish create the new standard for great American classic. Okay. So we've tried it, and so now what we do, Dave, is give it a grade, 1 to 10. 1 being bad, 10 being good, or the best. So I'm going to start with you. Tell us what you grade this whiskey as. 1 through 10,
9.
1 being bad, 10 being, you give it a 9?
10.
10? Okay. Got a 10.
She liked it.
What do you give it, Dave?
I've had good whiskey and bad whiskey. I'm kind of an expert at the bad whiskey. This is good whiskey. I'm going to go 9.
Well, we've got a 10 and a 9.
I'm going to go an 8, David. Not bad at all.
I'm gonna go 8.5. I thought it was really good.
I'll go a 9. So it's got a strong score. It's a great drink, and so I highly recommend it. Steelhouse, America's Finest. From the Black Bourbon Edition, limited edition Daytona 500, which will be coming up pretty soon.
Next
It's okay.
couple weeks, yeah.
All right, go racing.
Yeah. When we bought that, I actually told my wife, I said, this might be our, since it's in a can, this might be our first low score. And then it's
Well,
good.
pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Mark, you're our NASCAR expert. Who you got in the Daytona 500 this week?
I don't know, man. That track down there could be anybody. I don't even want to guess.
I'm going Harry Gant.
Yep. Harry Gant, the Skull Bandit.
He'll be
Anyhow.
home watching.
All right. Thank you again for joining us. Next time, look forward to it.